Hey, what's going on, everyone? Thanks for coming to watch. So, I've got guys an update on a big hurricane threat that we've got in the Gulf of Mexico. All right, this threat for a big hurricane just continues and continues to rise. All right, we've got very concerning information that unfortunately has came out from the models and also from the National Hurricane Center, as we really do think that this storm has the potential to become a very strong system. We're also expecting this to have a very high chance of impacting land. I've got all the details coming right up, right? So thank you for joining me here on this Sunday evening. We have a lot to talk about in this video because we did get a lot of information today from the models. We're going to talk about what the GFS has done for its past couple of runs, and also kind of just breaking down what the storm is looking like as of right now and what its chances are for developing. So starting out here, take a look at your current satellite here for the Atlantic. You can see the remnants of Gordon are finally gone. This is pretty much just, it's not even noted by the National Hurricane Center anymore. It was with us for a long time. We were kind of all just dying for it to, go away. So it's finally just a cloud of, some showers and thunderstorms, so nothing to worry about that. All right, but this is the big storm we are watching out for. This is the big one we're looking out for. This is officially Invest 97L. All right, so this is now a system that is becoming investigated, and it is starting to get its act together. As you can see, it's popping off a lot of convection as we go into tonight. All right, so I think the chance for this developing a little bit sooner is definitely going up. I mean, you could argue that this looks like a weak tropical storm. All right, this looks very very strong because it's just so large and it's also popping off a lot of convection. You've got a very nice spin to it, so it's really getting its act together. But that's why we're very concerned because the quicker it gets going, the quicker it gets stronger, the more time it's going to have to strengthen and strengthen. Because remember, this is going to be going into the Gulf of Mexico and it's turning up somewhere like this. So once it gets in the Gulf of Mexico, it really depends on how strong it is by then, because then we're going to see how much time it's going to have to strengthen, and we can kind of estimate how strong it's going to be by the time it impacts land. All right. So moving on here to the National Hurricane Center's current forecast. As you can see right now, we have two areas of interest to look out for. We're going to start out here in the main development region. All right. This is the same tropical wave that we were talking about last night. A tropical wave is located near the west coast of Africa. Environmental conditions could support some gradual development of the system, and a tropical depression could form during the middle to later part of the week while it moves westward to northwestward across the eastern and central tropical Atlantic. All right, so this is just emerging off the west coast of Africa, and already we have about a 60% chance for this thing to develop. GFS throwing out some pretty crazy runs already on the system. I think it's very possible that this is also going to be a big hurricane threat as well. So we'll talk about this as we get a little bit closer to the time frame when this is going to develop potentially. But we have a 60% chance as of right now for this thing to develop throughout the next 7 days. So obviously we'll keep an eye on that. So right now we're putting this at about an orange medium chance of development. All right, but now you look at Invest 97L, you can see they have wrote a heck ton of information on this. So what we'll read is that we have disorganized showers thunderstorms located over the northwestern Caribbean Sea, and portions of Central America are associated with a broad area of low pressure. Environmental conditions appear conducive for development of this disturbance, and a tropical depression or a tropical storm is likely to form during the next few days while the system moves northward across the northwestern Caribbean Sea and into the southeastern Gulf of Mexico. Regardless of development, this disturbance is expected to produce heavy rains over portions of Central America during the next several days. Interests in the northwestern Caribbean, the Yucatan Peninsula of Mexico, and western Cuba should closely monitor the progress of this feature. Later this week, the system is forecast to move generally northward across the eastern Gulf of Mexico, and interests along the northern and northeastern Gulf of Mexico should also monitor the progress of this system. That's pretty scary. So basically what they're saying is that if you're anywhere near where the storm's going to be headed, if you're in the far western portion of the Caribbean, all right, you should be on alert for very heavy rainfall, torrential rainfall that could definitely lead to flooding. So excessive rainfall could definitely be a big issue for you folks out there. Also, if you're anywhere here on the Gulf Coast, anywhere pretty much from Louisiana down to Florida, you guys need to stay prepared. Everybody, all right? Everybody on the coastline needs to be watching this very closely because we could definitely see, a change in the forecast, change in the path. All right, but this looks like a very concerning storm system. So as of right now, they do have this at a high 80% chance of developing. That has gone up. So now we have, last time we had a high chance, now we have an 80% chance, still a high chance of development throughout the next 7 days. Notice, we do have now a 50% chance throughout the next 48 hours. So I do actually think that this could definitely be PTC 9 pretty soon. And usually what they do when they issue potential tropical cyclones is that usually they try to give it a name and a forecast cone early enough before the storm actually, strengthens and gets close to the coastline, just because they want to make sure that they're spreading their forecasts to people a little bit earlier than when it's actually going to develop into an actual tropical storm, if that makes sense. So basically, they just want to get the information out quicker, and that's why they give it the name Potential Tropical Cyclone 9. So I'm pretty confident that's going to happen with the system. May happen as soon as tomorrow. We'll just have to wait and see. But as of right now, we got a high 80% chance of this thing developing. All right. So we take a look here at the GFS model. All right. We're going to compare the GFS and the European model. Basically, just looking at the signals we've got from both of them today. So we'll start out with the GFS. I want to go quickly to the 12Z run. Because remember, last night's run, the 18Z from last night, that's what we looked at. That was the first run where we got a major hurricane, looked like a Cat 4, Cat 5 kind of scenario. That's the first time we saw that in quite a while, a few days from the GFS. The GFS was taking a break from showing those big runs, and unfortunately, it started showing them again last night. So now, last night, we were left with the question, all right, should we take this seriously? Should we hype this up? Yes or no? Now, we were waiting to see what the GFS runs from today looks like, and they support what the 18Z run from last night shows. So we'll start with the 12Z run. These are two major runs from the GFS today. This is what we've got. Notice how this is already a 994 millibar low as it's entering the Gulf of Mexico. So this is already tropical storm Helene by the time it gets into the Gulf of Mexico. This is barely into the Gulf of Mexico. And then look at this. This goes from a 994 to a 973. A 974. A 994 to a 973 in 8 hours. That is rapid intensification. All right, if you want an example of rapid intensification, that's it for you right there. And the reason why we have that is because our SSTs, our sea surface temperature anomalies, are so high. Very above average sea surface temperatures. You have near 90-degree sea surface temperatures, and you need about 80-degree sea surface temperatures to get hurricane development. When you have 90 degrees, okay, that is when things can really go crazy, and that's what we see here. And this is not slowing down. This is dropping even further. This has barely made its way into the Gulf of Mexico. All right, this is by Wednesday of this week. All right, we have a 953 millibar low, probably a monstrous Category 3 hurricane entering the Gulf of Mexico, bearing down on the Gulf Coast. All right, it's picking its target here, but it's not done. It's got all this time to slow down and strengthen as it's over waters. All right, it's going to strengthen as much as it can to the very last minute before it makes landfall. And that's that would be the worst case scenario, because if you get a storm system that forms a little bit quicker, like I mentioned earlier, this is what we're worried about. The GFS showing a storm system developing quicker, so it's already got a head start before it moves into the Gulf of Mexico, and then it just begins to explode and really get that rapid intensification going. That's what we're worried about. And that's what the GFS is showing. So it takes us a little bit further, and you can see, it's self-explanatory. Just you can see by Thursday, we're waking up on Thursday morning, and you have a 940 millibar low that is just sitting here in the central Gulf of Mexico. It looks like it's going to take a turn east. So it looks like pretty much it's going to do something like, it's going to go somewhere in between these two markers there. All right, so it's bearing down on pretty much the panhandle of Florida. And this is basically what happens here, where, you see this just continue to flow north. It stays over waters. It does not slow down, but the sea surface temperature anomalies, once again, guys, It's just so warm. I mean, this storm is going to be entering the, warmest waters on Earth. It's going to be going over the warmest waters on Earth, directly over waters, no land interaction for a few days. And it just gives this storm enough time to really strengthen. And it gets down to a 934 millibar low, which is probably a Cat 4, Cat 5 hurricane. I mean, this is definitely a major hurricane, probably a Category 5 hurricane. Very, you know, concerning to see. We're not going to hype this up because this is one run of the GFS, but the fact that we're seeing this a little bit more constantly, more consistently, as we get closer to the time frame of the system, that's the big concern. And so what we see here is we see a landfall as a 933 millibar low, probably a Category 5, into the Panhandle of Florida. This is bringing a lot of rainfall. I mean, a lot of rainfall to the Florida Panhandle. I mean, you can see these pinks here, the swath of pink. All right, this is a signature for a ton of rainfall. Big time system. You've got rain all the way into the Carolinas by the time this is making landfall, and this is just going to scoot its way up into the southeast as much as it can before dissipating. But that's a very concerning run. Very, very concerning. 933 millibar low, and this kind of just falls apart fairly quickly, actually, in the southeast. So hopefully a shot of dry air will kind of, undercut the system, and we'll see before, if this makes landfall, we'll see how much it weakens it out, but we don't even know where it's going to make landfall yet, so we just have to figure that out first. So that's the 12-0 run of the GFS. What does tonight's run look like? Well, you take a look here, and you can see this looks even stronger as it gets in the Gulf of Mexico. Already a 980 by the time it's barely entering the Gulf of Mexico, and you're basically shaping up for the same kind of scenario. Finally enters the Gulf of Mexico, 971 millibar low by the time we get to about midday Wednesday. All right, and then we get into Wednesday night here. This is 8 p.m. Wednesday. You've got 962 millibar low, rapid intensification ongoing with the system. This is likely a high-end Cat 2, low-end Cat 3 hurricane here, probably a major hurricane, and it's just continuing. It's still trying to strengthen. Now you got this down to a 944 millibar low by the time we wake up on Thursday. So it seems like the timing for this system is going to be in between Wednesday and Friday of this week. It seems like that's when the system could eventually get to close to Florida and potentially make a landfall there. But you're already getting just battered by rainfall already across the entire state of Florida, and this storm hasn't made landfall yet. That's how monstrously huge this hurricane could potentially be. We were worried that, from the GFS seeing that signal for the storm being so large, that's a possibility that you could have rain all the way in Louisiana and all the way down to the Florida Keys and maybe even the Bahamas while this storm is still in the east central Gulf of Mexico. I mean, it's just pretty wild to see that, but such a big moisture pull, which we'll talk about in a little bit. But I mean, this storm really has the potential to be a monster. But this continues to strengthen. Doesn't get quite as low as what the 12-year run of the GFS shows, but massive hurricane, Cat 4, Cat 5, probably Cat 4 that we see here, Cat 4 scenario, making landfall just to the west of the Big Bend region of Florida. So just to the west of where Hurricane Debbie made landfall just a while back earlier in the summer. And there you go. You get a big landfall there. Another run of the GFS showing at least a Cat 3, a major hurricane making landfall in the Panhandle of Florida. Look at this. Look how almost identical those two runs are, other than the fact that the 12Z shows a little bit of a stronger hurricane. But the location of the system, so similar. So it really seems like the Florida Panhandle needs to be watching the system extremely closely. All right, I think you should already start making preparations if you're in the Panhandle of Florida already. Just making sure you're. I would right now if I were you, if you're watching here from the Panhandle of Florida, obviously leave questions down in the comments below. But if I were you, I would make sure to locate all your important documents just in case for this storm to end up impacting your area. All right, you don't need to freak out. You don't need to board up windows or anything. You don't need to evacuate because we don't even have a forecast cone yet. But I think just with the consistency of the GFS and also the other models showing a consistent hurricane landfall in the Florida Panhandle, all you got to do is just make sure you're locating those important documents just in case. All right, this is the just in case period for the system. And once we get that National Hurricane Center cone, that's when we can start making those serious preparations. But this just looks very concerning to me as of right now. With what the current signal from the GFS is. Apologize for clicking sounding there, but all I can say right now is that you just gotta watch the forecast closely, subscribe to this channel, and I'll be sure to give you guys consistent updates on the storm. And we see the same scenario play out where this kind of just floats its way into the southeast and really starts to weaken out pretty quickly with that land interaction. So brunt hit in the panhandle of Florida, and then this thing just tries to, it gets dissipated over the southeastern United States. So very concerning runs from today with the GFS. Obviously, we'll have to look at what's going to happen with tomorrow's runs. But I will say that the threat for a major hurricane has shot up in the past 48 hours, and we still got to talk about the potential for a worst case scenario. I think we can't rule out a worst case scenario. Just the fact that we've had many runs with the GFS showing at least a Category 4 hurricane in a row, that's just very concerning. So I'll keep you guys posted on that. But let's take a look here at the European model, which the European model has been very conservative with the system, comparing this to the GFS. The European model brings this system into the Gulf of Mexico as a tropical depression, brings us down to a 995 millibar low, and then we get into Thursday here, and then here comes Friday, and boom, you get a landfall here. Notice how it is still a hurricane, 986 millibar low, probably a Category 1 hurricane. Still a very large system, not a compact system, but very large. All right, this huge moisture swath is bringing rain all the way into southern Illinois when this system is making landfall in the Florida Panhandle. That is insane, but it's just because of the amount of moisture that's just getting pulled into the southeastern United States. I mean, even if you're not getting precipitation from this system, it would be very, very humid outside just because of how much moisture this thing is yanking up from the Gulf of Mexico. But this makes a landfall as a 983 millibar low. Once again, probably high in Cat 1, low in Cat 2 scenario that we see here, 981. And boom, you get that landfall. This does actually stay over land and stays a little bit stronger, a little bit, a little bit longer than the GFS. But there you go. Same exact location there. So the GFS and European model, very, very similar with the location. They're agreeing that we're most likely going to see a Florida Panhandle landfall. But it's still a very drastic change or difference in the intensity for the system that's expected. So obviously GFS coming out still as the most aggressive model, but European model still keeping things fairly conservative. So we'll watch that. But it really does seem like we can't rule out the potential for a worst case scenario to play out. So we move on here to the GFS, taking a look at your relative humidity. All right, we looked at this yesterday. This basically just shows us how moist the air is outside. I just want to show you guys this to show you and kind of give you guys a sense of why this is going to happen. So a good frame to pause it at is here. All right, you've got a trough that's moving down through the southeastern United States. All right, you're going to get most likely a low-level low, upper-level low potentially, or some sort of low-pressure system, a trough that's going to dig down here into the southeastern United States, the deep south. They could go all the way down into Arkansas, and this is what's going to yank the system up into the southeastern United States. All right, basically the flow aloft is that you've got a subtropical low that's pretty much getting absorbed with warm air. That's basically just spinning a lot of warm air, or a dry air, I should say, spinning a lot of dry air out here in the southwestern Atlantic. All right, this is going to keep the system away from going out to sea, and that's why we're basically seeing this enclosed into the Gulf of Mexico rather than going, out towards Florida and then make its way into the southwestern Atlantic. That's what we don't see. So basically what we've got is you've got this low pressure system here, this trough. It's going to dig down here into the southeastern United States, and it's going to tuck a lot of dry air, very dry, cold air. It's going to bring that from the backside of the system. It's going to tuck that in, and it's going to kind of just wrap that dry air into itself. Now, what you've also got is you've got obviously the potential hurricane Helene, and this is moving up into the southeastern United States because look at this. You have so much moisture up into here. look at all this moisture here. This is very humid, very moist air that this hurricane's really just wants, and basically this is just gonna bring a ton of moist air up into this trough, and that trough is basically gonna throw this up into the southeastern United States. So that's the flow of loft. That's how things are gonna be working. That's the pattern for the system. You can see exactly that playing out, where this trough brings it up into the Florida coastline here. Look at this moisture surge. I mean, this is probably the most impressive thing that we've seen from this hurricane so far, is that we just get a huge moisture pull, huge moisture return from the Gulf of Mexico. This is when hurricanes pull up a ton of moisture that sits down in the Caribbean and the southern Gulf of Mexico, pulls it up with it, and you just get moisture that feeds constantly, just keeps on feeding into the system. It's almost like it's a charger that's just, electrifying the system and just keeping it going as it moves over those warm waters. And now you've got a plume of moisture that's going all the way up in Illinois, which we talked about a little bit earlier. You have all of this hanging up north, waiting for the storm to move into that region. So you already know the system's just going to want to move north, and that's basically how you're going to get that landfall. So I hate to draw on your screen and make it a little messy, but that's how, that's just kind of explaining how our pattern's going to play out. And this basically is just the supporting details of why we are most likely going to see a near Florida Panhandle landfall with this potential hurricane. All right, so take a look here at the GFS Ensemble members. This is the GFS Ensemble run. You can see that members have tightened up pretty significantly, although I will say there is still some slight disagreement on where this storm is going to go. All right, you can see the majority of them take this into the Florida Panhandle into northern Florida here, and pretty much generally around the Florida Panhandle. These are the strongest members. These are the strongest tracks. You see a lot of hurricanes here, pretty much all hurricanes. But you do have a few loose members that actually do, a few stragglers that do actually bring this into Louisiana. I think it is still a possibility. Just looking at these members really spreading out still, I think it's a possibility that we could see a landfall slightly farther to the west than anticipated. I don't know if that would increase the intensity of the system. I think that we most likely see a pretty similar strength of the system. I just think that it's possible that we could still definitely get a landfall a little bit farther to the west. It's looking unlikely that we're going to see a landfall farther to the east than as of right now, what's expected. But if we were to see that, that would actually be more or less the best case scenario, because you have less time for this storm to stay over waters. Therefore, it's going to have less time to really, rapidly intensify and develop. And so you could definitely get a little bit of a weaker hurricane to make landfall in a different region. That's a possibility, but it's really tightening up to the point where it seems pretty likely that we're going to get a landfall somewhere in here. This is my circled area. This is what I'm putting my money on. I think that anywhere in this black box here, this black circle, anybody in here, I have a very high certainty that this storm is going to impact you guys. All right, it may not be a direct impact, but outer bands, eye wall, whatever it is, I think a lot of you guys are going to become impacted by the system. So please, just be aware, keep watching the forecast, keep watching this channel, subscribe to the channel, and don't be scared, be prepared. But just to give you guys also another sense of where the system is going, this is our pattern, our 500 millibar pattern. So this goes up pretty much halfway into the atmosphere, up in the sky. So basically, what you've got, this is our driving pattern. This is a good frame to stop it. So you can see basically what we've got here. Did not mean to click for signing once again. Basically what we've got. Oh my gosh, I'm all over the place. Clean myself up here and get us. Oh no. Hold on. Sorry, guys. 1 second. There we go. All right. So basically, what we've got now is you've got a big dip in the jet stream. You've got this trough that's digging down into the southeastern United States, and this is pretty much how your jet stream is going to be working. All right. You've got a trough that kind of just digs down here, brings down this lower pressure, and it's going to pull up the system. into the southeastern United States like this. This arrow is a little bit farther to the east, but more or less like this. And that's how things are going to work. Now, this ridging here, this little ridge that's trying to build on the East Coast, that's what is preventing the system from impacting the East Coast and, going into the southwestern Atlantic. That's what's pushing the storm away from the Atlantic and farther up into the Gulf of Mexico and just the Gulf of Mexico coastline. So that's why we have a very high certainty or very high, expectations that this storm is going to end up impacting the Gulf Coast. But this is with that, spin that we saw on the humidity, parameter. This is related to that high pressure system, I believe it is. But that's what's steering the system away from the southwestern Atlantic. All right, so that's all I got for you guys. Thank you for watching. I'll see you guys in the next video. So don't be scared. Be prepared. To stay safe out there. I'll continue to keep you guys posted on the new information that we're gonna get tomorrow. We're gonna keep looking at the GFS. We still have some time for the GFS to change. But we're just hoping that the system will not end up being a major hurricane, just hoping that the impacts are going to be limited. But it seems very likely we're going to see impacts to land, and it seems increasingly more likely that this system is going to be a strong hurricane. So thank you all for coming to watch. I'll see you guys in the next video.